Hi, this is Jen from Rook number 17, and today I'm going to show you how to make a simple and elegant three-tiered wedding cake. So you're going to bake your cakes. You'll want 3 layers per tier, and you're going to start out with a cake board cut to the size of your first tier. I'm going to put just a small dab of icing on the bottom just to help the cake adhere. I'm going to take my first cake, set it on the board as evenly spaced as possible, and I'm going to take a nice dollop or 2 of frosting, and it helps to have your cake on a Lazy Susan or some other type of rotating tray. You can see it makes it easier to turn as you go. And I'm spreading the frosting just to about a 1/4 inch. And you don't have to worry about it overlapping on the sides. That's fine, it actually helps us a little bit later. You don't want to build up your frosting too high in the middle. Otherwise your cake is not going to be stable. So try to avoid putting too much frosting in between your layers. Okay, so there you have 1 layer. We're going to go ahead and add our next layer of cake. Just make sure it's evened up on the sides. And we're going to repeat the procedure. Spreading evenly. Okay, and we're just about ready to put the top piece on. Alright, for the top, what I usually recommend, I bake all my cakes with parchment, so peel off the parchment, and this one, to give it a nice even top, I like to flip the cake over so that the part of the cake that was hitting the bottom of the pan now becomes the top of the cake. And so as you can see, we have all 3 tiers, and now what we're going to do is add what is called the crumb coat of the cake. So again, I'm going to start at the top and work it around. At this point, you don't have to worry about it being too even. Spreading it over the sides is a good idea, because then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it on the side and begin to spread it around. And this will fill in any little gaps. And you're just going to fill and turn your cake. And once you have a little bit of frosting, then you're going to run the offset spatula around the cake, basically removing any excess frosting. All you want is the slightest amount of frosting, and that is going to act as a glue to hold on your rolled fondant. And now on the top you can see there's excess, so we're also going to start the process of removing that. Just bring it in towards the center, wipe it back into your bowl, okay, and then just give the cake one final look. If you see any spots without frosting, you're going to want to go ahead and just fill in. If there are any areas where the frosting is lumpy, you're going to want to clean that up. And I'd say we're done, and you're going to go ahead and stick this in the refrigerator for about an hour. Since this is a tiered cake, we want to give it extra stability when we're stacking those tiers. So we've cut dowels that are the same height as the cake, and I'm just going to gently push those in. Try not to wiggle it so that we can keep the integrity of the cake intact. Just push those down. And they should all line up. That's great. That's all we're going to do. We're putting the cake in the refrigerator for an hour. So you're going to repeat the frosting process with all 3 tiers, or however many tiers you're going to do for your cake. Once they've chilled for an hour, you want to determine how large you need to roll out your fondant. So you're going to take, I like to use just a tape measure like this, and just measure up one side, over the other, down to the bottom, and we have 14 inches. So we know that we're going to need a 14-inch circle to cover this cake. And the next thing you're going to need is rolled fondant. You can buy it at most craft stores. You can also make your own. And the package comes something like this, and you open it up. I find that it's usually nice and fresh, and provided that your house isn't too cold while you're doing this, there shouldn't be a need to knead the fondant. And that way you're going to avoid getting any air bubbles into the fondant. So I just try to work it, make it a little bit bigger, press on it a little bit. It just should feel nice and soft and pliable. As you can see, I have put a little cornstarch down on my board, and you want to make sure that there's always cornstarch underneath. Take your rolling. So I've rolled the fondant out to about a 1/4 inch, and I just want to make sure that I have at least 14 inches in all directions, which I do. So I'll set the measuring tape aside, and the fondant should be, you should be able to slip your hands under easily, and you'll see I've put the cake back onto the Lazy Susan. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hands underneath the fondant, just like that. Careful not to put your fingers up too hard so that they come through. I'm going to try to center the fondant on the cake. And then you want to just gently press the fondant onto the sides of the cake. And you pull it back out, press it down. And this is when the Lazy Susan really comes in handy. You can keep rotating, pulling the fondant out like kind of like you're creating a skirt, and pressing it gently against the cake. And that crumb coat of icing is going to help the fondant adhere. Once you have it against the sides, you kind of want to just work your hands around. This will help smooth it out. Smooth around the top. Just make sure you don't have any air bubbles. Make sure it's tight to the bottom. And then for this, I'm going to cut about 1 inch to 1/2 inch around the base of the cake. I like to use an X-Acto knife. And just pull the fondant away. You'll be able to use that later. Just make sure you wrap it tightly in plastic wrap, kind of knead it a bit, wrap it in plastic wrap, and you should be able to reuse it. And then what I like to do is scoot the cake to the edge very gently, and I'm going to fold the fondant under. I could actually lift it up. And just continue to fold it under, and that gives you a really clean edge. And put the cake down. Just continue to tuck it under, smooth it out. Work out any air bubbles. And there you have it. And then you're just going to repeat the process with your remaining two tiers. Tool of the trade for getting the sides of your fondant nice and smooth and tight to the cake is just to pick up one of these fondant smoothers. You can get them at any craft store in the cake decorating section. And you simply hold it at a 90-degree angle to the cake and just press and work your way around. You can kind of arch it back and work the bottom. And it just makes it nice and smooth. And then again, you can use the X-Acto to just trim up just ever so slightly on the bottom to get yourself a beautifully clean edge. So I've covered all three of the tiers in fondant, so now I'm going to begin assembly. And as you can see, I've placed the bottom tier on a plate. You can put it on a pedestal or any sort of serving piece. They're nice cake boards you can purchase. Now in the middle here, I'm going to put just a small amount of our frosting, just to serve as a sort of glue. And I'm going to grab our next tier. One other thing I should mention is there's always a best looking side of the cake. So I've decided this is the best looking side of the cake, so that's where I'm going to be working and setting up my tiers. So I'm going to take my next tier, again looking for the most beautiful side, and place it on top, making sure that it's even on all sides. That looks good. I'm just going to give it a light little press to kind of help adhere. I'm going to repeat the process here. I'm just putting a little bit of frosting on top. And taking my top tier, finding a beautiful side. Yeah, I think I like it right there. And we're going to set that on top. And I'm going to press. So now what I've done is I've taken some sheer organza ribbon and measured it around the cake, cut it to length, and then I like to put just a few heavy-duty glue spots on the end of the ribbon so that I can then just wrap it around and it attaches in the back. It's nice and seamless, or almost seamless. And there you have it. So these are the butterflies that I punched from some paint chips that I picked up from our local hardware store. I used a Martha Stewart craft punch, and I'm taking some pearl-headed pins, and I'm just sticking the tip of the pin through the head of the butterfly and just punching it all the way through, giving the wings a little bend. And as you can see, I'm just adding them onto the cake now, one at a time. And the colors are going to get lighter and lighter as the butterflies climb up the cake. Easy as that.